Hidden Identities by Usman, Jabir, Corey, and Muhammad. Chapter 11. The first hidden identity in this chapter is Miss Dubose. She has a hidden identity because everyone in Maycomb thinks she is a crazy old lady, including Jem and Scout. We know this because in chapter 11 on page 132, Scout says, Jem and I hated her. If she was on the porch when we passed, we would be raked by her wrathful gaze, subjugated to her ruthless interrogation regarding our behavior, and given a melancholy prediction on what we would amount to when we grew up. Though later in the chapter, Atticus reveals that Miss Dubose was a morphine addict, and that is the reason for her obnoxiousness. We see on page 147, Atticus says, "She's dead, son. She died a few minutes ago." "Oh," said Jem. Well is right," said Atticus. "She's not suffering anymore. She was sick for a long time. Son, did you know what her fits were?" Jem shook his head. "Miss Dubose was a morphine addict," said Atticus. The next hidden identity in this chapter is the Camellia. The Camellia is a hidden identity because Jem is convinced that Miss Dubose is entirely evil and a dreadful person. On the other hand, the Camellia that Miss Dubose leaves for Jem shows her moral goodness because it was a way of appreciation. This scene happens on page 148. Scout says, Atticus reached down and picked up the candy box. He handed it to Jem. Jem opened the box. Inside, surrounded by wads of damp cotton, was a white, waxy, perfect camellia. It was a snow on the mountain. Chapter 12. The next hidden identity in Chapter 12 is Jem. Jem has a hidden identity because his character starts to change. We can see this with the way he treats Scout. He used to tell Scout not to act like a girl, but now he's telling her the opposite, and he treats her more harshly. We see on page 153, it says, Jem was 12. He was difficult to live with. Inconstantly moody, his appetite was appalling, and he was told me so many times to stop pestering him. The next hidden identity in this chapter is Calpurnia. Calpurnia has a hidden identity because she changes the way she acts when she goes to church. She acts similar to her own folks, and that makes Jem and Scout curious to how she acts when she is not with them. Scout even asked her if she could visit Calpurnia at her own house, because she wanted to see how she acts at her own house. Furthermore, Jem thinks to himself that Calpurnia is living a double identity. On page 158, we see the counter of Jem and Scout where they find Calpurnia acting different. They say, Calpurnia says, "They's my company." Again, I thought, her voice strange. She was talking like the rest of them. And finally, chapter 13. In this chapter, there is one hidden identity, and that is Atticus Finch. Atticus Finch is usually an easygoing dad, and he's usually not strict. But in this chapter, he becomes strict, and that shows another of his identity. But he only becomes strict because from the influence of Aunt Alexandria. We see on page 177 where Atticus acts strict to Scout and Jem. He says, "And that you should try to live up to your name." Atticus persevered in spite of us. "She asked me to tell you you must try to behave like the lady and gentleman that you are." Thank you for listening to our paper slide on hidden identities.